Welcome to Convergence, Episode 5 on People for People Radio. Find out how the personal is political as we explore the politics here on Earth, the exopolitics of our galaxy, and how these intersect with spiritual transformation through my unique perspective. Today we continue to explore the realms of exopolitics. I'm going to talk more about my paranormal experiences and introduce you to the culture and the beings from the Intergalactic Resettlement Program. This is part 2 of a 3-part series. If you missed part 1, check out the archives here on People for People Radio or my YouTube playlist to find all of the episodes of Convergence. And thank you for joining me. So where I left off last week was just before I got into my ET friends. I gave you all the background information about my childhood and my intergenerational contact with my family. And so today I want to introduce you to somebody I call Bob the Gray. Bob's been my friend since about 2014. He appears similar to a stereotypical gray alien, but he's got more pronounced bones around his eyes and he seems a little bit taller. His skin is very pale gray and his nose is small. Although I've never seen him physically face to face, he appears in my mind's eye and we maintain a consistent psychic connection. Bob answers my questions and he reveals details about the Intergalactic Resettlement Program by releasing my memories and or by facilitating remote viewing sessions. Although he is an ET, he has a higher station like the angels. I believe Bob is the one who arranged for me to become part of the Intergalactic Resettlement Program. It is interesting to note that when I'm visiting the ship via remote viewing, my ET friends on board know that I am there. Contrary to the stereotype, Bob has a sense of humor. Early in 2020, I was taking a deeper look at him through the portal of my imagination, and he superimposed a great big toothy human smile onto his face, which totally took me by surprise and made me laugh out loud. His intention was to get me to lighten up and to prevent me from becoming frightened by his true appearance. Bob has revealed to me that he and his kind wear contact lenses to mask and protect their true eyes, because for them, direct eye-to-eye contact is intimate, sacred, and personal. The contact lenses also protect them because their eyes are very, very light sensitive. This is why Bob and some of the other Greys appear to have these enormous, solid black eyes. Bob showed me that they use something that looks like a padded lounge chair to make contact. I think it somehow amplifies the psychic connection. I don't exactly know how they work, but I believe that they do boost the psychic abilities and help them to focus on specific individuals over vast distances. He doesn't really have a name, at least one that I could translate into English, but we agreed that I can call him Bob. He definitely has a sense of humor. Bob's appropriation of our 20th century culture includes a passion for music by Frank Sinatra and Michael Jackson. He says their music has the same energy patterns, which give him the sensations of positive mood. He is also what I would call a snappy dresser. He was wearing black slacks and a black turtleneck sweater last time I saw him. And sometimes he wears a fedora, quite similar to what Michael Jackson or that Frank Sinatra would wear. And he does that just for fun. So he is such a big help for helping me to remember what I've experienced and to also set things up for me. And I really, really enjoy working with Bob. So I want to switch over a little bit to my pre-birth agreements. Before we come to Earth, we have some choices that we make on what our objectives and our goals might be. And my life experiences have prepared me for my work as a quantum mechanic. And like when you need your car fixed, you take it to an automotive mechanic. But when the timelines need work or repair, a quantum mechanic is what's needed, and often more than one. I'm able to make contact because I am an energetic wide receiver. And my contacts include interdimensionals, ETs, angels, and more. Now, you might be wondering what's the difference. Well, an ET is generally a physical being that's alive and has a body. Angels have their choice. They can manifest as live beings, but they also are able to be just in energetic form. And interdimensionals are beings who generally are able to do either, but mostly they are etheric or they are what we would consider non-corporeal. And I can tap into whatever group or being has a job for me to do in order to help correct our timeline and help to establish the new positive timeline. So I'm not tied to any one specific off-world group or race. I'm available to help out as needed by various groups and beings from many interdimensional realities. Basically, you could say that I work for Holy Spirit, which is also called universal consciousness. In order to take part in full contact, I believe that our health, our psychology, and our spirituality must be upskilled and evolved. And there'll be more about this when I get on to part 3 next week. So this leads to my higher purpose. It took a number of years before I remembered my higher purpose. It was only about 2013 when I was going through some depression and I wondered why I was even here and what good was I serving. And I implored my spiritual guides to share with me my purpose for being here. The answer was simple yet profound. My reason for being here is to love and allow myself to be loved in return. I remember feeling so happy and free because I knew I could do this. I thought my purpose would have been a lot more complicated. So my overall purpose was not complicated at all and totally achievable. It really helped a lot. Later on, I began to understand that my higher purpose is to help anchor in the divine feminine and to help collapse, correct, and initiate new timelines. For those of us that are doing this, the work is mostly unseen and unappreciated by our fellow Earth citizens. I work closely with the morphogenic, or also referred to as the holographic field, which I actually call Mother Father because it's a very live entity to me. I also work with the living, ultra-conscious Earth, my higher self as an 8th dimensional self, and my soul team. And my soul team is made up of ETs, interdimensionals, ultradimensionals, angels, elementals, ancestors, and disembodied Earth people. So I already described that ETs are generally physical. Interdimensionals are usually non-physical. Ultradimensionals, that might be a new term for some of you, they are non-corporeal beings who have never been corporeal and they have always lived on Earth. So they are indigenous to Earth, possibly even more indigenous than humans. And then there's angels, as I described before, who can take human form or remain in the energetic. And elementals. Elementals include all kinds of beings like fairies and machine elves and all kinds of things. And they sort of hold together and help create the space-time, the fabric of space-time reality. Then, of course, we have ancestors, which is a long, long, long way back. We're connected to so many other people. And then, of course, there's disembodied Earth people who, for whatever reason, have chosen to stay on the Earth plane and help out other people. And an example of a disembodied earth person that I've had some wonderful exchanges with is Sun Tzu. Sun Tzu is the great strategist. And although he's famous for the book he wrote about war, how to achieve positive results from war, he's also just a great strategist. And by the way, Sun Tzu said that the only successful war is the war that never has to be fought. Anyway, moving on from there, I have to say there is no shortage of spiritual help and guidance. The ET realms overlap with the interdimensional / ultradimensional / angelic realms, and we all operate within the love harmonic of the omniverse. Now, if that's a new term for you, I want to give a shout out to Alfred Lambermont Weber. He has written quite a few books, but he's written a trilogy of books about the omniverse, and he talks about what that means, what it's made up of, how we can become involved. And his latest book, The Emergence of the Omniverse, talks about our day and how the omniverse is being manifest here on Earth. And all of his books are available in softcover, and also as ebooks. And right now, all of his ebooks are available for a donation. So for as little as $1, you can actually download one of his books. And I certainly encourage you to do so to learn more about the omniverse. The omniverse includes the universe and the multiverse, and then, of course, all the spiritual beings that I talk about. So I want to get into an introduction to the Intergalactic Resettlement Program. Just for clarification, I want you to know that my context is not nuts and bolts, and it's not religious. It's sociological, cultural, and spiritual. There is an ET group, a federation of planets that deals with our world leaders, but my friends are not part of that group. The ancestors of my ET friends started out as a rogue breakaway group who knew that negotiating with world leaders of dystopian planets rarely benefit the private citizens. So they work on an energy system. It's spiritual, and this is an ongoing program. In addition, the Intergalactic Resettlement Program is not part of the Secret Space Program, and this is only one of many possible resettlement programs facilitated by many ET groups. The ET members of this group are unnamed in human terms, and they don't speak English. There are many different ET groups, and as far as I know, my group is not affiliated with any other group. Ship politics are anarchist and autonomous, which you could also consider as being sovereign in nature. Intergalactic resettlement has been around for thousands of years, assisting many evolving beings who face extinction level events. This program is not specific to Earth. These beings also offer those of us who are ready a training program involving scientific expeditions to planets that will eventually be resettled. The planets that we visit have everything established in perfect balance except for humanoids. Let me be clear. ET is not here to rescue us or solve our problems. They are waiting for us to solve our own problems, come into power personally and collectively, and begin a new way to manage here on Earth. We will eventually stand up for our personal and collective sovereignty and reject 3D constructs. Evolving Earth people are welcome to make contact when they feel ready. Motivated by love and compassion, these beings make themselves available for near extinction or extinction level events to provide extraction. Planets are not the safest places to live. Natural extinction cycles are common, and in our case, this is the 5th reseeding of Earth. So that means that this is the 5th time Earth has been reseeded or repopulated with humanoids. If we are faced with an extinction level event, Some of us may be taken, and if so, we may be able to take our loved ones with us if they wish to go with us. Further, we can also personally participate in resettlement should we, as a collective, not come into our power and make the changes necessary to create heaven on earth. Those who take those who take responsibility for their own evolution will be offered a chance to resettle because they have skills and ways of being that have value to resettlement. In addition, most people who have contact experiences similar to mine don't remember, but we are remembering more now. The call has been put out there, and many are recovering memory of their experiences in order to encourage and educate the people of Earth. We can develop our own psychic skills and call in our guides, angels, and other truth providers for assistance, and we must learn to do this. We can make contact and connect once we are able to hold sufficient frequency. And this is often referred to as leveling up or ascension or evolution. So what's the purpose of this program? Aboard the big ship, they offer a pre-settlement program, a resettlement program, and immigration to space life aboard city ships. There are also exopolitical ambassadorship positions, which may include downloading your Earth experiences into their databank system. As an exopolitical ambassador, I also give reports and input from the human perspective. They value my perspective and indeed all perspectives from humans. This is why there are so many of us who experience intergalactic contact. As previously mentioned, these programs have been going on for thousands of years, and the resettlement program was originally set up in response to the fact that planets go through cycles, and sometimes they're just not safe places to live. Natural disasters that destroy humanoid populations can include diseases, both man-made and natural, planetary changes or evolution, culling by some ET races, and or the re-terraforming of the planet. This group is not involved in any of these intrusive processes. When a planet has been re-terraformed, it has everything we would expect to see on a healthy planet, including the animals, bugs, birds, fish, plants, oceans, forests, etc., in perfect balance, but there are no humanoids. Everything is there for optimal success: food, plant medicines, and opportunities for education. In the past, Earth was seeded several times by intergalactic resettlement programs, and in the case of what I have seen, there is no evidence of colonialism. Off-world resettlement results are very different than human resettlement endeavors, as we have seen here on Earth. Sometimes humanoids are created and placed on worlds as intergalactic genetic experiments, but more often, and as my experience shows, beings start over and resettle because they want to. Sometimes their planets become inhospitable, or a social experiment needs a place to unfold, or something where the humanoids are already highly evolved and choose to be relocated. Before a planet is repopulated by humanoids, scientific expeditions are carefully planned and managed. Temporary settlements are set up for diagnostic and training purposes, requiring hands-on or physical experience. Before we arrive, a quarantine area is set up around the camp or the training area to protect the ecosystems and maintain balance and integrity of the biosphere. I did not personally interact with any wild animal species while participating in this work. I expected that these beings would be so advanced that they wouldn't need to do hands-on stuff. But I found out that they want us to have that real physical experience so we can learn about the different worlds for ourselves. I don't think they need it, but we do. After quite a lot of training, we were split into teams, issued notebook tablets, which were programmed to do specific jobs, and then we went down to do real hands-on work. The notebook tablets were interesting. They were between the size of a cell phone and a notebook tablet as we would experience them today on Earth. They were made of clear glass or some kind of plexiglass or similar material. They had no ports or dials or buttons. They were square in shape, but they had rounded corners and they were very lightweight. These tablets could be used to gather data, take images, or record sounds. And when used to access data, the images show up on the screen as flat or 3D holographic representations. Each tablet was programmed for the tasks we were assigned to do while on the expedition. The tablets are also equipped with a psychic interface so we could record our thoughts and feelings while we worked. I felt like I was very physical during these experiences. I didn't feel like I was disembodied or astral traveling or remote viewing. I have also had experiences doing the ambassador work where I did not feel like I was in my body. But this was really a physical experience with eating of foods and doing work. The planets we explored had everything needed for life and all kinds of life as we would expect, except no humanoids yet. Our mission involved finding the very best way to resettle without disrupting the harmony of the biosphere. While on the planets, we live very simply. Each group takes turns designing and putting up the habitat, small huts, cabins, and sometimes tents that we shared. Everything is very plain and very utilitarian. The dwellings are made from the natural materials we found in the area or tents that we brought with us. And as mentioned before, we keep ourselves isolated from the animals. We ate local raw foods from the planet. I remember one time I was helping unload one of the small anti-gravity, quote, pickup trucks, which had an assortment of wild raw fruits and vegetables from the area. We took our meals together in a large tent. My favorite vegetable looked like a large, fresh, raw fig, and it was as big as a watermelon with a slight sweetness, and it was very juicy. It was soft and easy to digest. Being a foodie, I enjoyed this part of the mission very much. At this point, I'd like to give an intergalactic perspective on food. We are all vegan while we're living on the big ship. Omnivore options are available once we settle on a specific planet permanently. All plants and animals used as food are raised with love before slaughter. This might sound strange, but we make arrangements with the plants and the animals we plan to eat and recognize their sacred gift. Also, humanoids will not be gluttons if we raise and we love our food. Now, I get a little bit of negative feedback from folks who truly believe that being a vegan is more spiritually advanced than being an omnivore or a carnivore. But as we have even found on Earth by oodles of different experiments, plants are conscious. Plants are alive. Plants are aware when we are going to kill them and when we're going to eat them. There's been all kinds of experiments where they've hooked up little electrodes to leaves, and then they have cut part of the plant off and then cooked it and registered the feedback from the plants. And the plants freak out, just the way an animal would when it sees its friends or its family being cut and being killed for food. So I would argue, and from an ET perspective, that plant-based foods are very sacred. They have consciousness, and they are really the most innocent of all the beings, more innocent than live food that comes from animals. So I'm not trying to sway anybody in any direction, and I'll get more into this later on, but I just wanted to say that this is how I experienced the politics of food off-world. And then, as I mentioned, and as you'll learn more next week, while we're on the big ships, we are actually vegan at that point. We don't carry animals to kill. In fact, most of the beings who live on the big ship have always lived there, and they've always been vegan. And that's part of their culture and part of their way of doing things. And again, like I said, there'll be more on that next week. So, as above, so below. There is no one way of eating that makes sense to all beings. There are three primary purposes for all food, whether it's plant or animal: to reproduce, to add to the balance and harmony of the planet, and to serve as food for other beings. So, as I mentioned, I've been condemned by vegans here on Earth for saying this, but this is my truth and my experience. So there was always time for us to relax after the workday. From one expedition mission, I remember bathing with my friends in natural springs which issued forth from rock cavities in the side of a mountain. It was so tranquilizing and felt so very good. We were relaxing after a busy day of work, and as we rested in the hot bubbling water, there were two beautiful moons in the sky. It was very peaceful, soothing, and enjoyable. Since the moons were not superimposed, they caused a bit of an optical illusion, and we tried to guess which one was closer. One was large, and it rotated very, very slowly, and the other moon was smaller, and it moved faster. It made for a really interesting puzzle. Overall, the work was awe-inspiring, but not difficult. We just gathered data, scanned plants and bugs, etc. with our tablets, and we worked quietly together. We also gathered food and water from the surrounding area, ate our meals together, and took time for rest and relaxation in the evenings. We slept in simple sleeping bags on cots or simple bedding made from natural vegetation. We bathed in springs, lakes, and rivers. These expeditions lasted from a couple of weeks to a month, and the only thing missing for me was to be able to explore more outside of the quarantine area. Later, when we were back on the big ship, the data was integrated into a holographic representation, and we used it to learn more about how the biological systems on the planet were interconnected and interdependent. I had one really strange experience that doesn't really fit with the rest of my experiences, but I want to share it with you anyway because it's quite interesting. So I had an interesting experience during one of the expedition trips to a planet. While we were there, we stayed in small wooden cabins, and we spent that first day setting things up. But the next day, we were walking through the fragrant woods on our way to work. The trees were very tall, and the bark was very dark brown, almost black. The foliage was made up of huge, dark green leaves, which only grew at the very top of each tree. I saw a small creature about the size of a cat fly past me, and although I didn't get a very good look, it appeared to be some kind of a giant butterfly. This was strange because we were quarantined from the animals, and this was too big to be a bug. But it had large, thin, iridescent wings like a butterfly. Later in the day, when we were returning from work, I heard something crying out from a treetop. I looked up, and it was this very same small being and it seemed to be in distress. So I held out my arms and I called to it out loud with my voice. It fluttered down into my arms and seemed to be very relieved to be with me. I carried it in my arms back to the cabin, and since it had fallen asleep, I just laid it very gently onto a cot. It looked halfway between a cat and a monkey. Most of the animals normally found on these planets are very similar to the ones on Earth, with only minor differences. But this creature was out of place, and I thought it may have been a lost pet. I honestly don't know the backstory, and I truly wish I did. So I want you to know that we were never fearful while we completed our expedition missions. and we felt very safe while we were there. We endeavored to just collect data and not interfere with the animals. This was not about taking a vacation or sightseeing. I did this work for parts of 3 months of our Earth time. And as I mentioned in the last episode, the time differential is different. So although I was taken pretty much every night for a 3 month period of our Earth time, I was actually gone for what I experienced more like 3 years. So before I go on, I am just going to see if I have any comments from the chat. Nope, doesn't look like I have any, so I'll just continue. Now, I'm sure by now you're wondering, what is ET like? Well, these beings are just ahead of humans in their evolutionary process. They are at our next stage of development. They look like us, but they're healthier, smarter, better adjusted emotionally, braver, and very spiritual, but not that far ahead of us. Also, they are in every way more technologically advanced. Most are taller than the average human, but some are not. These are our brothers and sisters and cousins. They look very much like the human diversity we see on Earth. Intergalactically, we are all members of the same species, just different family lines or races. For example, all people born on Earth are of the human race. One big difference from us is that they live much longer. In fact, how long they live has more to do with how interested they are in their present life than anything else. So I would say the minimum amount of years that people live on the big ship is 500 years, which would be equivalent to about 500 of our years. But many live quite a bit longer than that. Although I experience them in great diversity, all of these beings breathe oxygenated air, eat food, sleep, but all have slightly different requirements. The exceptions are the aquatics, which I saw only once on one mission aboard the big ship. Now, aquatics are not actually aquatics because the fluid environment that they live in has the same oxygen content as our air, but it's not H2O. Many gas-breathing humanoids, like humans, can actually live for short periods of time in their liquid environment because our lungs can also act as gills. The aquatics are tall beings with very smooth skin like our aquatic mammals, like dolphins or porpoises or killer whales. They have slit-shaped nostrils on their faces instead of protruding noses, and they have gill vents just behind both small ears. These beings are very handsome or attractive. They are bald and they are slight of build. Their feet are flatter than ours. They have webbed toes and fingers and use their feet and lower legs for general propulsion. They don't walk. By using both arms and legs in a synchronized motion, they're able to swim very quickly. They wore no clothes, and I found it difficult to distinguish gender because they have internal genitalia. There were also short beings with beards who were barely 5 feet tall. These ones do everything together. They love to maintain physical contact with each other, and they remain very close and intimate. The females have an obvious bust, more facial hair than the males, and they reminded me of characters from a book by Dr. Seuss because of their bright red, spiky hair. I got to know one couple because they took a liking to me and sort of adopted me into their fictitious family. I loved their comical faces, warm affection, and the way they would reach out and gently touch me as we shared time together. They're so gentle and very loving. Some other races look much like us, but they have variegated pigment on their bodies, and they wear clothing that exposes their various blotches and spots. Apparently, they can rearrange their pigment for private or distant communication. These unique pigment constellations allow them to communicate much the same way as American Sign Language allows deaf people to communicate from across a crowded room. They, like most beings that I encountered, were what we would consider to be fit and beautiful. Some with long, flowing, wavy hair, long arms and legs with very fit torsos. It was a chore not to stare at them like a little schoolgirl. All of these beings tend to live in close-knit family groups who prioritize time with their children. I found much diversity because most of these beings are of mixed race, and their ancestors come from numerous star clusters and galaxies. In many cases, this mixing has been going on for thousands of years. They have no concept for racism, and all forms of love and reproduction are celebrated. Now, they come in a huge variety of skin tone variations, including all tones and shades of brown, off-white, pale blues, and even orange. Some beings can cloak their appearance in a similar way as chameleons or octopods do here on Earth. They prefer to wear bright-colored printed fabrics for clothing, and you can always see a hint of the same pattern on their skin. These are very playful beings with a tradition of complex games similar to hide and seek. Since we all communicate telepathically, we always know when they are present, and besides, their bright choices of clothing also make them quite visible. Some beings are physically shorter, but most beings were taller than us with larger frames. Some beings have more body hair and others not so much hair. Some, like the aquatics, were completely bald from head to toe. Then, to add to the diversity, all beings have their own choices of hair and grooming style and fashion. I have to tell you about the angelics, which are not actually angels. I'm choosing words closest to my experience so that you can understand. So the angelics look like perfect, beautiful, godlike beings to me, with large muscular frames and long flowing white hair. They are among the palest of the beings that I met. There were only a few that I saw, but they seemed to keep to themselves socially. Since we all communicate psychically, I could not hide my fascination with them, and although I stared rudely, they were very patient with me, and they did not make an issue out of it. It was obvious that I meant no harm. All of the beings that I saw look very much like us, and as I mentioned earlier, they are our slightly more evolved brothers and sisters. Some are androgynous looking and others are more obviously gendered. Some prefer more clothing and others less. Even within groups who share similar appearance, there is great diversity of personality, temperament, talent, and preferences. I want you to know that there is nothing to be afraid of. Earth people are more cruel and without a moral compass than our ET brothers and sisters. Also, these are not the only beings out there, I have been told. This is the tip of the intergalactic community. Sometimes visiting ETs are present via bilocation, but other times they use clones for their transfer of consciousness when they, as experiencers, require physicality. And there are three kinds of clones. There's the generic, which is like a one-size-fits-all. Then there's the genetic copy of the original. I have one of those. More about that next week. And there is the utilitarian. And that is, I guess, bodies with special features that enable beings to do different kinds of work that they wouldn't normally be able to do in copies of their indigenous bodies or even in the one-size-fits-all. So you'll have to come back to hear more about that. You can imagine my amusement when I realized that to my friends on the big ship, I am also ET, and I wear the label with pride. Yeah, a lot of people don't think about that, but to other off-worlders, we're ET. And another thing is we have lived many, many, many times, and we've not always come into this world on Earth. We have come into other worlds and had other experiences. So in that way, we're all ET. So I want to talk a bit about communication today. In all exopolitical endeavors, we do not hold a conversation as we here on Earth experience it. These beings have the ability to run thought privately or publicly and can involve just a select few when desired. Body language can be an indicator of a topic needing sharing. And in this way, we always ask the other beings if we can share common or group or private consciousness before attempting. And this is like a psychic handshake, which also sets up personal and collective boundaries. I found it to be very interesting that adults have the ability to psychically shield their young, which includes forming boundaries until the children are mature enough to do so for themselves. So, ETs never have a problem of, not that any ETs would anyway, but they wouldn't go and start communicating to somebody else's children without their parents' consent, because the parents have the ability to psychically shield their young. And they do that until their young are around puberty, around the age of puberty, and then they start to be able to do that for themselves. And it keeps everybody very safe. It keeps the boundaries really clear, and children have a very, very high value, and everybody wants their children to have the best life possible. And so I just thought that was so great. If only we could do that here on Earth, we could avoid so much trauma that is inflicted on our children here on Earth. So once we're welcomed to a conversation, which, as I explained, is not exactly a conversation, it's all done through telepathy, then we share imaginings, which are like running short shared videos within the mind's eye. We all communicate on a psychic level. There is no speech. Communication is done by feeling, emoting, and imagining. Some gesturing is common, and some beings gesture more than others. Some emit little noises for emphasis, but mostly communication is inaudible. Composites of energy, personality, race are used instead of names to identify individuals. So I have been psychically known as impulsive, joyful, helper human. That's what they refer to me as. So now I want to talk a little bit about ET culture. ET culture is love-based with emphasis on compassion, empathy, mercy, and it's a feeling-based community rather than a word exchange or speaking community. There is no deception and no bullying. Unless we are playing a sport or a game, there isn't even any competition. Unlike us, they have never been programmed or brainwashed. These are totally free beings. Their culture is very peaceful, gentle, and kind, with no emotional drama. This group of beings love social interaction and are always willing to offer understanding and support. Everyone strives for improvement, and different beings within this group are at different levels of awareness and technological proficiency. It is interesting to see how they have woven culture and sacred meaning into many of the more intense ship functions like travel and energy maintenance. For example, when the big ship needs to replenish its energy stores, the occupants willingly donate some of their life force energy. When the day for this process arrives, everyone takes a comfortable position somewhere on the ship, and we participate in ritual and meditation to release the needed energy all at once. The ship emits frequencies that sound like tones to help us to enter into a deep state of relaxation. Then the ship absorbs what it needs from our collective life force energy. This takes several hours and leaves us feeling very tired. Over the next few days, we rest, we take light meals, and we use this downtime to celebrate the experience. On rare occasions, there are a few who do not recover very quickly, and they are assisted to the healing chambers, which are used to stimulate our own ability to restore energy reserves. This spiritual event only lasts for a few days, but it's considered an enjoyable, celebratory respite. Another classic holiday is celebrated when we move the big ship to another location, and I'll talk more about that in part 3. Everything is based on harm reduction and love. No one intends to harm, frighten, or dominate. Those are human ways and not ET ways of being. Just as there's diversity as represented in their physical appearance, there's also a lot of variety in social customs, ways that ET bonds with others, and things to do for fun and entertainment. Later in part 3, I'll talk about how culture is also reflected in the economic system within the ship, which is resource or trade-based. But for now, I'll say that culture is ever-changing as we meet and interact with the occupants of other big ships. Similar to Earth customs, there are gatherings to exchange fashion, foods, and news. Think of each big ship as a clan, and when we meet up with other big ships, socialization reminds me of clan gatherings. We exchange gifts, see old friends and family, meet new friends, experience new ways of doing things like hairstyles, dress, adornment, music, healing techniques, and career opportunities, etc. Many have similar cultures to ours, but are much freer and more respectful. There's no stress and no conflict. We all respect that we all have free will and free choice. Diverse sexual behaviors can also be freely learned and experienced because sex is considered to be just as normal as eating and sleeping. On the big ship, the environment is sex positive. There are many interracial relationships. Some are social, some are romantic, some are sexual, and some are reproductive. Some things are universal. The love for a newborn baby, the desire for community and celebration, and enjoyable sexual relationships. Next week in part 3, I'll give you a tour and details about the big ship, physical versus non-physical presence, and what to expect during the orientation process. But this pretty much concludes part 2 of the 3-part series. Please let me know if you have any questions about the Intergalactic Resettlement Program, and I'll do my best to answer them on the next show. You can email me at forbiddentransformation@gmail.com. Join me and bring your friends as we go live at 1 p.m. Mountain Time every Tuesday here on People for People Radio. And I want to give a special thank you to Gaz and Vanessa for hosting me on People for People Radio. And much love and light to you, the viewers. And thank you so much for sharing this time with me. If you would like to enjoy more of my content, check out my website at www.karenholtonhealthcoach.com, where you will find an abundance of free resources to assist with energetic ascension into physical, mental, and spiritual paradise. There you will find the 9 steps to quantum health transformation. Now, this is a free, no strings attached, comprehensive online lifestyle course. There's over 20 videos in the program, and you can find this on my website or on my YouTube channel. I'm also host of the Quantum Guide Show, where I conduct interviews with awakened masters. So I encourage you to let them share their quantum work with you. I'm also co-host for the Forbidden Transformation with Karen and Chris show. And this show is specifically designed so that you can learn how to make positive ET contact for yourself, improve your life, and find your experiencer community. So if that's something that would interest you, I encourage you to watch the Forbidden Transformation show. And then, of course, for the fringe view, science fiction becomes science fact as you learn about my real life, paranormal, and extraterrestrial experiences from my many podcasts. And if you would like to support my work, check out my online shop where you will find Zendome's Orgonite, my unique brand of orgone generators. They're ethically sourced, they're handmade, and they're double charged for maximum effect. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with orgone generators, what they are is basically crystals and metals that are within an organic resin matrix. And as the resin cures, it shrinks and it puts pressure on the metals and the crystals. So you can look this up online. It's called piezoelectric. The crystals within the orgone generator, their endpoints become polarized and they emit an electrical frequency. And every crystal has its own unique resonant frequency. So if you're drawn to rose quartz, it's because that frequency is something you need. If you're drawn towards lapis lazuli or amethyst, the same thing is true. And so these are put into a matrix where they become piezoelectric and they emit the frequency. And then the metal helps to distribute the energy. And then the individual shape of each orgone generator has a different function for producing a different wavelength of energy as well. And if you go within the crystalline structure of crystals, you will find that they look, especially all crystals in the quartz family, they look very much like DNA. And just as we can pull from the holographic universe to create manifestations, the crystals pull from the same 0 point space, and they pull energy, and that energy can be referred to as prana or universal consciousness or Holy Spirit or chi energy. And that's also emitted along with the frequencies of the crystals. And so the energy the ambient energy that's in your room kind of surrounds the orgone generator, is absorbed in, and then is repurposed or retuned into healing, positive energy that is then put out into your environment. So it's really a fantastic, it's not a cure for all the EMF that we're experiencing from our technologies, but certainly it's helpful because it transmutes a certain amount of that into these really positive, beautiful energies. So have a look on my website and you can see what I have available. We're actually not making any more at this time due to all the COVID restrictions, but I still have quite a bit on hand. I also offer some comfort crystals. I have a small limited collection of energetically infused semi-precious stones. I also offer lifestyle services, which workshops, assessments, and one-on-one support and coaching. And I also have PDF downloads, which are printable, shareable copies of my lessons. So my website again is www.karenholtonhealthcoach.com. That's KarenHolton healthcoach.com. I'm a different kind of health coach. My email is forbiddentransformation@gmail.com. And of course, you can find me here on People for People Radio, www.peopleforpeople.ning.com. And then there's my YouTube channel. That's www.youtube.com/C/Karen Holton TV. And that's how you can get a hold of me. Just going to have a quick look to see if there's any questions that I may. How do they transfer technical information? Oh, because it's all done through telepathy. It's all done through nonverbal telepathy. And we all have this capability. All Earth people are psychic. It's just that we've been told that that kind of stuff is from evil sources, or we've been told that it's fantasy, or we've just basically been told that we don't have this ability, but we actually do have this ability, and it's important for us to start to use it, to rely on it, and to experience it in our lives, because this is going to open us up to the interdimensional realms, the angelic realms. You all have guardian angels. I'm sure you've all heard of that before, and they're there and they're ready to help you. You just need to say hi I'm interested in hearing what you have to say. So again, thank you everybody for joining me, and I'm wishing you much love and the very best that life has to offer, and I'll see you next week.